Entrepreneurship is hard, so let's fix that and dive into our heroes' journeys. This is Taking Flight, an entrepreneur's journey, and I'm Sarah Torville. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of those already in flight. This show is sponsored by EO Atlanta. So it is wonderful to be here today. The sun is shining behind me. It's a great day here in Atlanta. And I'm really, really delighted to have our guest join us today. Our guest is an entrepreneur, strategic planner, going to list them all here, angel investor, founder and CEO at Acuity, a board member of Entrepreneurs Organization, market director for Venture South, host of Drink While You Think, which is a podcast like this. You're laughing so much, aimed at founders of accounting firms. Kenji Kuramoto. Welcome, Kenji, to the show.
Thanks, Sarah. Really great to be here. Thanks for that very nice introduction, too.
You're really welcome. There was a lot on my list here to cover. So,
oh, wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's really, really great to have you. I've been looking forward to this call. So
have I. Yeah, so have I.
Good. So let's go straight into it. So I really want to learn about you as an entrepreneur, Kenji, and your journey. And the first question I would love to ask you is, what did you get right when you took your first flight into becoming an entrepreneur? Please tell me, what did you get right?
What did I get right? Well, there were a few things. It's a much longer list if you asked what I got wrong. So thank you for not asking about that, Sarah.
Yeah.
I'd say there's three things that come to mind for me that I got right. And this is years ago. This is 18 years ago when I started Acuity and kind of started my entrepreneurial journey. And I'd worked in traditional larger businesses. We'll maybe talk about that a little later. But then one of the first things I did was I kind of tested the market a bit. Before I made that leap, I was able to, I wouldn't call it moonlighting, but I was able to kind of try out and say, okay, let me see if this concept that I've got actually works. And so in my free time, I didn't have a lot of it. I was very busy in my job, and I had young kids and a growing family. So I didn't have a lot of time, but I really felt like I had an idea. And so being able to go test it a little bit just to see if there were, some people call it customer discovery or market fit, helped me get some initial confidence because I was nervous. I'd never been an entrepreneur before. And so that first one to me was thinking, okay, is there really something here? And so I was able to do that for a few months before I was like, okay, let's just go ahead and do this. I guess the second thing I think about what I got right was I created a bit of a backstop or milestone. So this was, okay, now I've decided to do it. But I said to my wife, I said to myself, probably more than anyone, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months. 6 months, I'm going to put myself on a clock here to get to, I wanted to get a compensation level kind of back in parity of where I just come from. That was, everyone's going to have maybe a different milestone or something that matters to them. I was coming out of a fairly lucrative role and again, had a young family and obligations. I thought I need to make sure I have a very clear distinction of I need to meet a goal or milestone. And if that doesn't work, doesn't happen, what am I going to do next? And so in my case, it was, I told my wife, I told myself, I said, this doesn't work. I'll go back and get a recruiter. It's 6 months from now.
Right.
And I'll have some interesting stories at least to tell when I go out and look for my next job. And so that I think gave me and my family some confidence that this wasn't going to be just some harebrained idea that we were going to let go on and on forever that could damage us as a family, that could, hurt my own marketability as a professional. And so there's something about that for me that helped me, that just gave me some confidence of like, all right, let's just hit that milestone, gave me something to kind of focus on. And then the third thing I would say is I know myself, I've gotten to know myself way better over these 18 years of being an entrepreneur, but I even knew then when I started that I felt like I would do this better with somebody else.
Right.
And so right out of the gates, I had a business partner. And for me, that was important, having someone to talk things out with, someone who was very aligned with me of like, we're taking a big risk. And so I don't know if I would have at that stage in my life had the courage to take that first flight if I didn't have some of those things there, if I didn't have some understanding of the market, at least a backstop of where if this isn't working, I got to pull the plug. It's something clear. And then also someone I could be doing it with. If it was just me by myself, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would have gone forward there. So that helped me, get that. That's what was right for me. Those may not be right for everybody, but those definitely helped me take that first flight.
I love that. The fact that you put a timeline on it. And did you say it was not just a timeline, but I had to earn, was there kind of a monetary? So in 6 months, I got to be at this point.
Correct. Yeah, there was correct. It just felt very, and again, we'll talk, I come from a financial and accounting background. So the number side analytics come very easy to me. So my first thought was, well, let's not do something if it's going to really hurt my ability to produce income for my family. And I thought, okay, let's use that. It may not have been the perfect one. I don't know that 6 months is the perfect timeline either, but it was something. I had to start somewhere with something that I could explain to others around me, especially my family, and say, hey, let's use this as a benchmark. Does that seem reasonable? And once we kind of coalesced around that, I think that gave me something, that gave me a little bit of momentum, some things to work toward, and I could track progress toward it. Yeah. But
I also think it's a very good point, because I think I'm hoping our listeners might even kind of stem to spouses too, because it's nerve-wracking for a couple to make that decision, because it tends to be a partnership decision. It's a couple decision.
Very much so.
So you're right. You're giving them, it's like saying, this is not going to go on forever. This is the timeline. And I think, I know from being a wife myself, I would have, it's good to know that.
Right.
So, if it's not working, we can go back to the way things were. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really good.
Absolutely.
Great insight. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So who were your co-pilots on this journey? You made a reference a little bit to a business partner, and obviously a great wife, but talk to me about what that looks like.
Yeah, you nailed them there, Sarah. The very first one and foremost was my family, my wife in particular. And it probably did help having that milestone I mentioned of, hey, 6 months, give me this shot. And she did. And she's wonderful. She was, for those who were watching on video, out to here pregnant, very, very pregnant with our second child. And so we were doing this, at an interesting time. And she was was so much a partner in this. She knew this was something we'd been talking for quite a while. She knew I was unhappy. I was searching for something different. So she was very helpful. And in that, she was an incredible co-pilot. She came from an entrepreneurial family too, which was really helpful. I did not. And so actually her and her family were, not that mine weren't, were really helpful. Like, all right, there was almost cheering on, like, great, go for it, go do it. And that gave me confidence.
That's great.
I mentioned my first business partner, Stuart Brooks, and Stuart and I had worked together previously. And so we had a business relationship before. We'd worked together fantastically well. And so he and I were the ones. He's a neighbor of mine. He's not a business partner today. I actually bought him out about almost 10 years ago. But it was very amicable, and he still is a good friend and neighbor to this day. But he was that person that we bounced the ideas off of together. And then the one I'd say really in the business is my co-founder, Matthew May. And Matthew came in. I ran Acuity by myself for about a year to 2 years after I bought out my first partner. And I found out, and I should have known this, I was not very well suited to running something by myself. I'm better in partnership. I'm better in community. And I brought Matthew in as a business partner partway through that. He's been around now almost, I think, 9 years. And we've had phenomenal success. And so I've had to, my performance in almost everything I do. I can look at it not just in business. I can look at it athletically or any part of my life. If I do it with a partner, if I do it with a small group, that's kind of one of the reasons why I love EO so much. I do things in community. My performance is so much better. And so, none of this solo pilot thing for me. I'm sure that I'm going to be fascinated to hear other people on this podcast who are very individual kind of solo kind of pilots. I'm a co-pilot. Give me a crew all day long. That's what really, it makes me personally happy. And I can actually see my performance is much better when I'm with others.
Right.
So some wonderful co-pilots.
Yeah. You've learned a lot about yourself, and it's good. You've had the chance to not have a co-pilot in terms of a business partner. And you're right, realizing what you need. So it's really good to hear that. And you need good people around you. Sounds like you have that.
great
Oh,
people
wow.
around me. And again, I really admire people too, though, who don't need that. My wife has been a great entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and she's always been, in many regards, she's operated better just by
Right.
herself. She's
Yeah.
really hard and driven, and she just goes and goes and goes. I'm not built
Right.
that way. I'm
No.
built a little differently. So that was a good
Yeah.
learning process for me with those great co-pilots.
100%. So tell me, what is a challenge that you and your team had to solve recently? I want to dig into this one.
Yeah. This one was interesting, Sarah.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of a backstory about our company to help give some context to this.
Mm-hmm.
We're essentially all accountants, all financial accounting people, all professional, kind of a very white collar kind of industry. Almost all of our team members have come out of other larger accounting firms. So we don't really have many people who've come right out of college.
Right.
Most of our team at Acuity are relatively seasoned. And one of the value propositions to coming to work at Acuity is we let people well before COVID work wherever they want to work, even work however many hours they want to work. So they have a massive amount of flexibility, which in our industry has been non-existent. It's just not existent at all, flexibility.
Right.
And so we've tended to win every time we do assessments with the team. The number one thing they value most about Acuity is flexibility. I love that I can integrate this. So we have a strong leaning toward that. So with that as a backstop, one thing we stopped doing many years ago, we stopped kind of doing performance reviews.
Right.
And I justified that as, we've got a whole bunch of people who've been working. I mean, these are sharp accountants who like to do the right thing anyway. They've learned how to manage themselves. They're very independent. And so I kind of justified that as a reason to stop doing them. And we started doing this year monthly employee surveys with a variety of different questions asked every single month. There's one consistent question just about almost kind of think about it like NPS scoring or a happiness level, right? But the rest of them are fairly targeted towards specific kind of issues. And one came out around performance management and feedback and reviews, and we just got crushed on it. Like everything else was great. And it's just like, and I'm reading these reviews and I'm like, people were really upset. Like, I don't get enough feedback around here. I don't know what my path looks like. I don't, and I had been thinking, wait a minute, I thought they wanted all this freedom and flexibility just to they don't want to be micromanaged.
No. And
so I think I have confused micromanagement, which I hate. I'm the worst micromanager. I can't do it. I won't do it.
No.
I confuse that with feedback, of giving good feedback. And we had team members really strongly I want to hear how I am doing. And not acceptable that I'm not getting feedback from a manager, from someone here helping me think about things. And looking back in hindsight, I feel a little silly about that, Sarah. I'm like, well, that seems reasonable, right? But until I saw it in terms of metrics and survey results, it really slapped me in the face. So that was an issue. We kind of looked at each other, and we've got grown. We're about 150 people.
You're 150 people?
Right. And not doing performance reviews. And
that's a lot of people. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So they didn't have a pathway, did they? And
they didn't have a pathway, Sarah. They didn't have, we only brought on an HR person, a team member, about 9 months ago. So we were way behind in we've been our team members are so.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
They came from Deloitte and,
they had all that structure. They
know all this. They don't need this. They're very independent. They've worked in the industry 20 years. And so I kind of just were really late to the game on things, basic HR functions.
Yeah.
And so that was one specific that came out and we're like, we got to do something about it.
Yeah. So what did you do? Obviously put them in place, but how did you do that?
We did. Thankfully, we had just hired way too late, not way too late, but we should have done it much earlier. We'd hired an HR manager, and she had started, as soon as she stepped in the organization earlier this year, she had kind of started seeing, this seems problematic. But then when we got the survey results afterwards, she was like, hey, we got to do something about this.
Yeah.
And we spent, she and I spent a lot of time together going, okay, how do we pull something together here? Like, how do we go about putting this in place at scale for so many people?
Yeah.
And so she spent, about a month or more kind of architecting basically a performance review process, which we looked at it, thought it looked good. We made a few tweaks to it from the leadership perspective. And we thought, okay, let's put this in place, but we need to now communicate it out. Like, what are expectations around it? What does it mean to people? There was actually a ton of communication I was surprised about initially. I thought, great, let's just get some kind of form we pulled together, let people, managers do this, and let's just go. But then it was like, well, wait a minute. How do we communicate out to the team what this means? Is this going to be tied to compensation? Do we need to, at the same time, is this, whoa, have we budgeted for that? So all these other issues came up.
Things. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was just sharing with you before we hit the record button that I just came back from our fourth quarter leadership retreat. Mm-hmm. The one that we did back at the end of the second quarter this year, we put it all around this. It's all we did was kind of focused on the performance review process. We set a timeline that we wanted to get this done in Q3 of this year. Yeah. So we really got a lot of things together. We put the whole leadership team together for 2 days. We did nothing but almost focus just on how are we going to execute this? What does it mean from the org chart? What does it mean from people's roles and responsibilities? What does it mean from compensation? Mm-hmm. And it really kind of pushed into a whole bunch of other areas. So it was intense, and we did launch it. We put a timeline where we launched it. It ran for about 8 or 9 weeks. Everything from the employees had to do a self-review. The managers did a review. Then those were compared against one another. Then the managers had to schedule a one-on-one meeting with the teammate to go through that. That took about 8 weeks for us to execute. Right. And we also realized too, there were some teams like one of our managers has 35 people underneath one person. He got kind of crushed. I mean, he was just like, he had nothing else he could do. And so we learned from that. We've had to reconsider some things on the org chart there about how we give some more support. And we also had to do it. We were lucky. That's a little bit of a slow period in the accounting cycle, is kind of the Q3. It's not too busy. And so it was a fairly good timing for us as a business, but we really had to hustle to get it done. And we did. We got it done. Yeah. I was really pleased with the process. I think we did a very good job with it. There's some things we learned that we have to change and adjust for next year for going into this again. But it was everybody from a leadership perspective focus for probably close to 6 months. It felt like all the planning and prep to then executing it. And then, as I just mentioned, we came back from our offsite. It was really nice to come back and look at all the results and really dig into this. And it's such a valuable wealth of information from your team. If someone like me would have just thought more and thought, I need to be paying attention and listening better to what they're saying, because there's wonderful nuggets of wisdom and value that we can bring back to the business if we just take the time to ask the questions.
Yeah, that's such a great learning. I'm glad you listened to your team and you implemented it. I'm amazed. You obviously did a very good job keeping 150 people without. But you're right. People need to.
The interesting thing about that, Sarah, is I think that I don't know if you've experienced it or other people experience this as entrepreneurs. We're known in our space. We're pretty good about wow, you guys have a great culture. And people love to work there. And I'm a very relational person. And so actually, we brought in an outside HR advisory firm to help us with this. Actually, one who's an EO member, they were helpful. And their point to me, they said, yes, you should have hired an HR manager long ago. Yeah. However, this is an area relationally and culturally is an area of strength for you. So you've been able to stretch it. You've been able to stretch it further. Yeah. And so it got me thinking of going, I wonder if there's other areas where we're relatively good at that we may be underinvest in because we can get away with it. Kenji's good relationally, other team members are. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway of we missed the mark there because it's actually an area we are pretty strong in, but we went way beyond what we should have in terms of support. I don't know if other people experience that, but.
Oh, that's such great insight. And you're right. It's now opened up your eyes to because at the end of the day, you guys are good at accounting. Right. And obviously, you're very good at leading your business too. But that's when, and I suppose you get to the size you're at, you've got to start bringing in the experts more. So
you do. And I think there's, for example, for us, marketing,
Yeah.
we're accountants, horrible
Yeah.
with marketing.
Yeah.
We brought in marketing years ago, outside help on that because we knew we were weak in it. This was an area that a little bit egotistically, I'm like, oh, I'm good at culture. I'm good at relationships. And I was slow to actually bring in experts when I should have done that earlier.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Great learnings for you. And I'm sure your team and your company are all like loving the fact that they have that career path. So good on you. Good on you.
It is fun when you're doing the monthly surveys like we are now, and they some of the questions come back around. We can actually see and measure that improvement. And so it's fun to see now the scoring before we put this in place to afterwards. It's fun to watch, like, okay, we're making improvement. We're getting rated higher. So it is fun to see that. And again, I think my big learning, my biggest key takeaway from that whole process was that really good people, they want to know where they stand.
Yeah, they do.
Right. They want to know how I'm doing. I mean, they're not afraid of tough feedback. No. They want to know how they're doing. And that's something I was like, I should have remembered that earlier.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's great. We learn along the way, and I'm hoping you're helping our listeners, maybe avoid some of that. So that's really
I hope
fantastic.
So.
Yeah. Fantastic insight. So tell me, what excites you about the future? What is the destination for you? Where are you heading?
Oh my gosh.
Big question.
I'll break that in a couple things. I think where I'm excited about, and I'll speak in terms of my industry, but hopefully many people are experiencing this, and whatever type of entrepreneur you are, is in our industry in accounting and finance, we are seeing a lot more technology and automation come. Mm-hmm. Some people look at that in a scary way of, I'm worried about, will I have a job anymore? Will the robots come in and take over and things? I'm the complete other direction on that. I'm a very, very strong believer that my profession, the accounting and financial profession, is really, we're a profession of knowledge workers. Yeah. And along the way, sometimes we've forgotten that. I think maybe over many years ago, when accountants were having to enter information in and write manual checks and just do things that were relatively manual. Yeah. I think it's easy to lose our way of, we're just there to do data entry. And I don't believe that. I think our profession is there to be knowledge workers, to help analyze data, to help really improve and highlight performance of the business. So I see the advancements in technology and innovation in our space, and in many other spaces too, beyond accounting. I'm very, very bullish about that. And I think that it's disruptive. There are some jobs that will be automated away. Yeah. And I do have empathy for people who are maybe in positions where their jobs might be affected by that. But I think there's such opportunity in that. I'm grateful that I don't have to sit with ledger paper anymore and write out things like journal entries and do math on a calculator over here. I mean, I can focus more on what can I bring from in terms of knowledge and value to clients. And so I'm very bullish about that overall. We as a business will continue heading that way. Where am I heading? I think a little bit at the intersection of that, I would say, is that you mentioned things I've been doing. Certainly, in essence, we're an accounting firm. We're a little bit of a unique one in the way that we operate and we're structured, but I will continue to be there. I'm very proud of being in that. I think it's an incredibly noble profession that's very, very needed. But it's all continue to operate Acuity and run it kind of in unique ways. I'm very passionate about doing things a little differently and how impactful that can be. But also, you mentioned I've focused more on angel investing these days. We bring a lot of technology inside of Acuity, but it's been fun to help support some early founders as they've been building technology that impacts the lives in our space. And so, yes, I've been an angel investor just very recently. I was starting to do that more at scale through, you mentioned the group Venture South, where we're trying to build a community of people who want to come and do angel investment there. Certainly, we're looking for ways to get good returns for us as investors, but at the heart of that too is, let's support tech entrepreneurs who are going to need some outside capital to get their ideas started. Let's support other entrepreneurs in that. And those are entrepreneurs that just don't have access. They're not going to get a loan from a bank. It's a technology. They're going to need some outside capital. And so I'm probably heading more in that space of where we can I can help support and drive more innovation in our space by, whether it's investing in companies, continue to do things differently to Acuity. And I'll share with you, Sarah, that on the personal side, like I'm coming across a big birthday coming up here next year. And I've been a little bit like,
I just had mine. So
did you?
Better,
oh my
yes.
gosh.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of dreading it this past year. And suddenly I was with my EO forum just last week, and just some things that happened. I'm like, you know what? I've turned more into more excitement. It's turned into more excitement about, I'm just getting eager about where I think the next few years are going to go. Just for me personally, for my family, just because some things are starting to kind of move into a way of where I think I can do more impactful investment and relationship building. So I'm if you caught me about a month or two ago, I'd have been like, oh, I'm getting old. Sarah, I'm getting old. I'm more. And
now you're feeling better.
I am feeling better. So hopefully that'll stay.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Those big birthdays are tricky. Tell me, I feel the same.
It is a little bit, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. I've just celebrated basically the entire year. Every month, I'm doing something special to celebrate my big birthday.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the same.
Yeah, you got it. You got to do things which make your heart warm. So, and then enjoy with people, you want to enjoy it with. So, thank you for sharing all that. That is just, I love everything you've shared. Some really great advice for everybody. And now I would love to learn a little bit more about you. Who are you? So let's take pre-flight, pre-entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Tell me about yourself.
Grew up here in the States in the Midwest, and I was the first person in a few generations on my father's side to not go in to be a doctor or in the healthcare work. Right. We had this long, my grandfather, my dad, his siblings worked in healthcare. And I remember as a kid growing up, being very proud of my dad. I still am. I still look up to him as much because he was in acts of service and helping people. And he did a lot of work with trauma and car accidents and very dangerous situations. And I'd hear stories even from people in my community I grew up in about your dad really helped me or saved someone I cared about, whatever it might be. And very impactful. I love that side of it. What I didn't like was he was so incredibly busy. And it doesn't mean other people in other professions aren't, but because he was almost an emergency responder for things, it was just... And I don't know. I looked at that and I was like, oh, that seems a little bit. But it also, so I wasn't really that drawn to healthcare. Also, I can't handle all the blood and the gore. Like some people can do that. Me, no.
I know. You know if you like blood and you know if you don't.
Exactly. I'm on that don't side. Yeah. So so anyway, as I was a young person growing up and thinking about college and what do I want to do with my life, I'm looking for examples, I think like many of us do. And my dad's best friend, who we did family trips with, and his family they're neighbors of ours. He was an entrepreneur. And so he ran a bank and he had other things going on. And he was just a really gregarious person. I always resonated with him and kind of looked up to him. And as I got to know more about him, as I do odd jobs occasionally for him in his business. And I just thought, oh, wow, he's this entrepreneur. It seems so cool and interesting. I found out he was he was an accountant before he was an entrepreneur. Right. And he was an accounting major in college. So being very immature and young, I just thought, oh, that's how you become an entrepreneur. Right. So I was fascinated with entrepreneurship. I thought, he said to me once, and he was right. He goes, oh, accounting is the language of business. I've since revised that thinking. And I think accounting is a language of business. It's a very important one, but there's many other important languages too. So when I went to college, I said, sure, I'm going to go do accounting. That's what I thought the way to do it was. So I went to university and I jumped into the accounting program. In fact, it was the top accounting program kind of in the country. I think it still is outstanding, very rigorous. I competed, I worked, I did all the things. I ended up there's this period of time, I would say from college, early life, I was fascinated by entrepreneurship. I knew I wanted to go into it somehow. Then I thought the road to get there was accounting. And I got into accounting, the best school for it. I had lots of great job offers. I went to go work for Arthur Andersen back in the day, just a brilliant global firm. When I went to work for them, I got on their best jobs they had. I was doing all the things. I was at the top of my profession. Same thing when I left Arthur Andersen after about 4 or 5 years. I went to work for a tech company. I became their controller. then their CFO. That storyline, I guess, in the middle of those milestones, in the middle there of where I was a young professional, young person, I was getting every bit of like, I got all the awards, I got all the everything. I was kind of grabbing the brass ring on everything, but I was feeling rather hollow and empty behind it. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
But I didn't know better because I was a young person. I thought, well, this must be how work feels.
Yeah.
It's just kind of my jobs in high school, like, a lifeguard and things like that. Now I've got a real job and I just wasn't very satisfied. I didn't really enjoy the work much and it didn't feel like it fit my personality. And I just thought, well, too bad, Kenji. Some things just don't fit your personality. You got to go out and just make a living. And so, then something happened when I was at this tech company. So I'm in my mid-20s now. And actually, I just switched jobs from Arthur Andersen to this tech company. And I had to go and just do a routine physical. I was changing healthcare plans. And through a routine physical, literally, I got a cancer diagnosis, like in my late 20s. And for me, it was honestly probably the first time I could remember of where things didn't work out for Kenji the exact way he wanted it to.
Yeah.
Right. And I was very down about it, obviously, but the outcome of it was it caused me to go, okay, wait a minute. Life is short. It's good to have a perspective change. And that started me on my entrepreneurial journey. I thought, okay, if I can get this behind me and stay healthy, then I need to really think about what it is I want to do. And that became where it took a little bit of time once we got that behind us and we were sure the health situation was all dealt with. And we were worried about the impact it could have. We hadn't had a family yet. My wife and I hadn't. That impact that. Once that kind of became clear, we were like, that was really the thing that said, okay, I need to take a step out in entrepreneurship and try some things that I've always been really passionate about, even though I'd kind of jumped onto a path that I wasn't very happy or fulfilled with, but everyone's telling me, oh, you're one of the youngest CFOs I've ever met. You worked at Arthur Andersen, you do all these things. It became more about, I need to think about what things I'm passionate about, what I enjoy doing. And so that was a really helpful in EO, and those who are listening will know that you go and do things like lifelines, they call it. And so these lifelines, when you kind of draw out these milestones visually and you talk about them, mine, you can always see that crashing low lifeline thing is my cancer diagnosis. And then immediately after it comes up, it bounces back up so high and there's these wonderful things that happen, but I needed something to kind of shift my perspective. And it hasn't been all wonderful and rainbows ever since, but it's been very positive. And I think that's one that thing in my mid-20s really helped change the trajectory of what I wanted. It wasn't as much about, could Kenji go compete and get all the best jobs, which I'd been doing, but I was so unfulfilled. I was so unsatisfied. I just was not, my heart wasn't in it. And that was a big change to where, okay, what do we want to do to have a more fulfilling life that's I'm passionate about? And so I'm grateful I look back with a lot of gratitude toward that. In the moment, I was not, I was scared to death. I was angry. I was mad, but boy, since then it's been, I'm very, very grateful for that moment.
Yeah. So, it really sharpened your focus, I think.
It does.
Like it. Yeah. And at the age of, I think you feel like you're infallible, if that's the right word, when you're in your 20s, don't you? Especially when you've been on a rocket ship. Yeah.
Did you experience that same thing too, sir? Were you like, I just felt like I couldn't. I
haven't had to experience what you've had to experience, but I think you believe you can ride every wave. And
absolutely,
like you're saying, you're doing everything that, you told yourself you would do. And then you have something like that happen. So
absolutely.
So it does, we say it all the time, but it's so true. It makes you a better person. And it changes. Look at where you are now, and would that have happened, and all those things. So I'm really glad you're in the position you're in right now, and which is great to hear. So I'm all about that, sharpening that focus happens at the worst of times, but makes us better people. So
it does. I hope that, I don't know that I've been perfect about it, but I'm like, okay, I don't need that. Do I need to go through life-threatening mortality issues to sharpen things? No, I shouldn't. I should just be able to do that more as I mature. And I think I've gotten somewhat better, but it is interesting at times when you feel like you need to get knocked off your horse a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to change that focus for sure.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that. I really would love to hear more. I mean, you shared about Acuity. I had no idea the size of your company, which was, it's so impressive because I'm on a similar route. I'm not there yet to your level, but would like to be. But I would love to know, what problem do you believe you solve Like, what does Acuity do? You say it's quite unique, and I want to understand that uniqueness.
Yeah. So the problem, and I do love this problem because the number one thing that entrepreneurs dislike most about being an entrepreneur is typically dealing with the back office stuff, right? The non-fun, glamorous things in accounting, bookkeeping, tax, the things that we do fall squarely in that. That is not why people become a founder or entrepreneur. They've got something, they've got a mission, a market, a cause, a solution they care greatly about. It is never, I've barely yet to meet an entrepreneur who goes, oh, I love my accounting. I love doing it. And so that's what Acuity was built on, solving that, on solving that issue of saying, well, great, if we can come in and do that for you in a cost-effective way, you can stay focused on whatever your passion and your mission is. And so in a nutshell, at the high level, that's what we've always done. Even 18 years ago, we founded this. We specifically sought out high growth entrepreneurs to go and help. Because we knew that they were like, I'm growing something big. I mean, someone take care of this. And we often found in those wonderful, great stories of prominence and success as a fast growing entrepreneur, oftentimes there's a little bit of the dirty secret. It was like, oh, the internal stuff was just a mess, was just messy. And so we wanted to always be the accounting team and function that operated at the pace that most high growth entrepreneurs do. We wanted them to be refreshed by saying, oh my gosh, this is a team that actually works just like we do. You guys use modern tools and technology. You're not always saying, no, you can't do this or that. And so, essentially that's what we're trying to solve, is that number one thing that entrepreneurs dislike most is the back office. We're trying to help solve that. And we're fitting into a point to where typically what's happened, Sarah, is the entrepreneur themselves, their spouse, a family member, or the office manager, someone's doing the accounting, but they're doing it kind of because they have to, like they have to wear the hat.
Yeah.
There can be a long time frame or a big stretch of a business cycle that, it's kind of no man's land where we're not big enough to have full-time team members in there yet. We cannot go hire a CFO, a chief financial officer, or a controller, or maybe even a bookkeeper. Sometimes we're there to fill that gap to where it hasn't scaled enough to where, okay, now we can afford to have full-time accounting team members. So that's been a fun one for us to come in and solve. And I'd say the uniqueness, the feeling that business owners typically get is usually kind of a refreshed feeling of, oh, I'm actually talking to accountants who feel entrepreneurial. They actually speak the same language I do, who are, again, working at my pace, using interesting tools they're bringing to me that are helping the business. The experience many entrepreneurs get is, I talk to my tax person once a year or my accountants once a year, and they don't know what's going on in my business. They're making me do all these things for them. They're not really giving me much advice about my business. So that's how we look at it from the client perspective. And in the industry's perspective, like I mentioned earlier, things like we've let our team for a decade work wherever they want to work in the world. They get to pick how much time they work. So we do a lot of things that be very attractive within the profession, where people say, "Oh, I like working there, where I'm not micromanaged. I can, I can work in a style more comfortable for me." And they use really great technology, so I'm not doing a bunch of manual things. So that's kind of how we go about it. And it's been happening for 18 years, and even though the client base has changed, it's still the same mission after all these years. So
that's great. So your team, so even before COVID, they were allowed to work anywhere. So do you have a central office? Do people go to a central office?
We have an office here. So for those in Atlanta, right in Buckhead. So we have an office there. It is, as is many things at Acuity, we consider it a company asset, to where if it's an asset to a team member, if you'd like to use it and it benefits you, use it. If you feel like it's just
doesn't help,
a nuisance to you that you have to commute to, then don't use it. So it is completely voluntary. It's always been that way. Again, for the 10 years or so, it's always been that way of like, come down and use it if you want to. Sometimes we find team members that go, oh, I'd like to have a break from the household and get out of my house for a little bit. And it's a nice area of town. So people do like to come down and get coffee or meet friends for lunch and say, hey, I'll work at the office for a few hours. But we've kept it that way, where people have a lot of choice and flexibility. And that works in our profession. Again, accountants are typically very compliant people. They want to do the right thing. And so if we give them choice, they typically said, hey, you make the best choice for whatever it is you personally and you and your family want. And if that's working 40, 50 hours a week, great. If it's working 20 hours a week, or you want to take some of the summers off to be with the kids when they're out of school, that's fine. You want to go live at your beach house for the next 2 months, that's wonderful. Or you want to come in the office every day, you can do that. So it is a bit of a unique.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
A lot of trust there. No, I think that's great. I mean, yeah, I can understand why people want to work at Acuity. I love that. I need to think about some of these things.
I mean, there's certainly some logistical things we have to work through. We've always had to work through on that, but I've been really fortunate to have great team members who've helped us kind of through understanding what it looks like to have a distributed workforce. And it means for me, I'm doing a bit more of this now. It means for me that I have to be more intentional with going and spending time with them. We just flew everybody in, the entire company in about a month ago to do. That's not an inexpensive thing to do, but everybody in, but it was wonderful. And I'm heading to the Philippines in a couple of weeks to go be with some team members there. So it requires a bit more flexibility even from me, but it does seem to attract some great high quality team members.
That's great. That's fabulous. You found a solution there which works. I love that.
Yeah.
So I love this next question I'm going to ask you. So if you were to do this all again, Kenji, would you do it all over again? That's the ultimate question. And I think we might change our mind from month to month, but would you do it all over again?
Oh, that is I've been asked this before, and I probably said it a million different ways, but I think that, and maybe I'll break it into two parts. So maybe I'll think about it one way. So I'll say, if the question is asking if I could go back in time and do it all over again, would I have done it? The answer is yes. I absolutely would have, even through all the challenges and trying times. In fact, I might have started sooner. I might have been like, you know what, let's get going sooner. Like, why waste the time? And so I just think that in cases of taking, talk about taking flight, right? I'm trying to think of a time of when being more active, moving quicker would have been a problem. I think it's more of a benefit in almost all cases I can think of, especially as entrepreneurs, as very active people. Almost by design, I think entrepreneurs and founders are active. We're going to go out there and make something happen. And very rarely can I think of times when, well, I'm going to wait and see whether that would be a benefit. And so I think I'd probably start a bit sooner. Now, there's some things you can go back and say, well, I need a little bit more education, or maybe being a little bit more measured or balanced on some things. But overall, I would have started sooner. Now, I will take the other side of that, because in many cases, when I've answered that question about would I do it all over again, the question was maybe more specifically asked, or I took it as, hey, if my business Acuity went away today at my age and stage of life, would I be willing to do it again? That's a very different, I don't know where I stand on that. I'd probably, I don't know, I might. But as I look back, I'm like, do I have those 18 years in me through all like the times of, I mean, very honestly now, like I remember the years of where we were just, we had little babies at home and we were broke as can be. And there was no wonderful date nights at restaurants in town. It was whatever we could get from Trader Joe's or, and they were formative. Those were wonderful years when I look back at them, but like, I've already experienced those once. Like, I don't know that I want to put, especially myself, my wife, back through those things again. No. So I think I would have to do it different. I don't think I'd have it in me to go at my age now to go, okay, let's jump on another 20-year treadmill. No. I don't know. What do you, how would you answer that? I'm curious.
Don't ask me. I'm like, I think you answered it perfectly. I think there's different ways to look at it. I think it sounds like you've built an amazing company. So, but doing it now, like you say, at a milestone age, I think is I don't know if I'd have the energy to do it all again.
I don't know. Yeah. I hate to say that, because you and I were just talking about how milestones, and like, I think it's great that we're doing that. But I'd also like, now that I have that perspective, that would be a lot harder, I think, to do right now.
Yeah. I do remember I remember when my children were young and I was running the company, and I remember just thinking like, and I always felt like I put everybody first apart from me, so I put my children. People would say, oh, you're working, what about your children? But I put my children first. Work was always like after I'd taken them to singing song times and after I'd done all of that stuff. And I felt the person I was hurting was me. And now as I've got older and my children are thriving, I'm so pleased I did it the way I did it.
Yeah.
So because I'm proud of my company, and I don't think I would be sitting here today if I hadn't started when I did. So so just kind of, I feel like those challenges along the way, we can now sit back and say they were worth it. And my children look at me as a role model, and I love that.
I was just going to ask you that, Sarah. Again, we're very similar stages of life. I was going to ask if your children can now have a little bit more appreciation for what their mother was doing. I mean, at the time they're thinking, "Oh, I just want mom's time all the time. They don't understand what the work is." But now, as young adults who are thriving, I assume they look back with a great amount of respect and admiration. Look at what my mother created. At the same time. So,
but I also still feel, though, when they were younger, again, I don't know. They didn't know that their mum wasn't there all the time, because I'd put them to bed and I was writing my business plan, and I'd get them up and off we go swimming. It's like they kind of, okay, when they started getting to school, that's when, but then I've always worked from home. So they come in from school, I'm here. So I really feel like they haven't been hurt by it. And actually they're proud of it. So I am just, but like I said, the person who was hurting was me. I was exhausted for years. So now I'm so pleased that I did it that way. I am. So giving my perspective.
I love hearing that. It's so, my wife and I felt so the same way too. I mean, we felt the same way. And I think it is us. We tend to think that we're overworking and we're just, and it's hard because that season of life when they're young and they require so much attention. It is very different than it is now. It is. I mean, I'm much more active and out, and friends.
It's
friends
nice.
I know.
It's being nearly that certain age, isn't it, Kenji?
I think that's where the excitement came in, realizing, wait a minute, we're about to get a whole bunch more time back, and we're having a little bit more capacity to the things that we're passionate about versus then you just had to be so mindful of the family. And we still are, but they're off in college, and they're more checking on things like, hey, can I get some more money for this? But
tell me about it.
It's not bath time or getting fed or running into soccer practice.
Yeah, you're right. It's more, I 100% agree with you. I love what you've shared there. So tell me a little bit more about you. You've talked about now you have a bit more time, but what do you like doing? What do you do outside? What do you do when you're not working? And
when I'm not working, when I'm not working, so the travel has really ramped up quite a bit for me now. And I like that. I actually do really enjoy it. So I'm really happy that I'm kind of getting back to it, in that things like COVID are behind us. My family's at an age to where I feel much more appropriate with me being traveling, and they're okay with me traveling as well too. So I love the travel. I love traveling even more with my family. That's even better when we can all do it together. So I enjoy traveling. I'm a bit of a Atlanta sports nut. I guess sports in general. I love, I've been longtime season ticket holders for like lots of different sporting teams in Atlanta. I love going with friends and family to whether Falcons games or our soccer club, Atlanta United. So I like this time of year where I just enjoy that. It's a good kind of bonding camaraderie thing that I enjoy doing. Usually when I travel, and my business partner, it helps that my business partner, he's like us. He's in the exact same stage of life that we are. And we have very similar interests. And so whenever he and I travel together, which is frequently, we're always like, hey, what's an interesting sporting event we can go to that's local here? And we've done everything from at the university level that we've looked at, is there interesting high school sports? We're always just kind of like, what's a local experience there? During COVID, one of the things that was interesting, I think a lot of us maybe came up with the COVID hobby, right? Or something to kind of occupy our time a little bit. Mine was, I started brewing beer. And so this, and I've always enjoyed, having a pint and sitting with folks. I think there's something I read a book. My son gave me a book years ago when he was in high school. And I think it's a book, it's something like The World in 5 Drinks, I think it's called. And what they do is they analyze history based on these different drinks, whether it's wine, tea, coffee, beer, and they kind of go and explain different parts of human civilization around drink. And so I read the part about beer. I've always enjoyed having a beer with friends on, a happy hour. And I don't know, I kind of got buried in my head of like, well, I want to try this. Like it's kind of the oldest drink. It's even before wine. And so I started doing this. And my wife was like, what is this weird equipment showing up from Amazon, like on her front porch? Like, it looks like it's plumbing supplies. So don't worry about it. So I've been doing some beer brewing. And I still continue doing that. And during COVID, I didn't tell anybody I was doing it.
Yeah.
But I'd go and make beer, and I'd leave bottles of beer at my friends' homes or houses. And they're like, and we didn't know if we could interact yet because it was COVID. And I said, hey, I made you a little gift. I miss seeing you. And like, what did you leave? I said, that's beer that I made. I'm like, it's probably horrible, but I made it. And so it kind of started like that. And now I brew a little more often. I bring kegs of beer to our tailgates to some of these sporting events and things. And it's been kind of a fun, random thing. And then does it taste
good, Kenji? Does it taste good? Come on.
Some do, some do not. Right. There's some, my wife's the best judge. There's certain styles she really likes that are pretty good. There's some others I'm like, oh, feel free to taste it and you can laugh about it. Like, like, okay, this was kind of funny. Kenji made it, but I don't want to really drink it. There've been some of those, but mostly they come out okay.
Good.
Come out all right. So it's just something that kind of was interesting that I wasn't sure if I'd keep doing it after COVID. And I have not as much because I'm traveling more. It does require a little bit of time. Yeah. But there's some interesting side pieces to that of you can look at it through the historical context. I think there's something very communal about having a drink with someone else. It doesn't have to be alcohol, but for me, it often is. I think there's something wonderful about that communal. I think of all the wonderful experiences and friendships and even things around business that have happened for me around a table or on a bar stool or at a pub somewhere. And so it's been fun to kind of work on that a little bit. And then you mentioned we have a kind of a silly little podcast that does involve drinking on it.
Yeah. Tell us the name of that podcast.
It is, you mentioned it's called Drink While You Think.
Love the name.
And that came from, I think, some old college university drinking game I'm sure we played.
Come on, we've all played it. I played it actually not that long ago, so hey.
Yeah, I love it, Sarah. There we go.
So sharing that, but yeah.
But we do have a podcast that we do that. And it was just a way, it's really now more of it's a YouTube channel podcast where my business partner and I usually get on once every week or so and just he and I usually have a beer. We may invite another one of our friends on, and we just talk about maybe one topic that happened inside of our business that week. And ours is fairly accounting firm oriented, but a lot of them are general business things that happen. Whether we talked a lot about our performance review process that you and I just did when we were going through that, and we're very transparent. So we talk a lot about.
Sounds great. I need to check it out.
Maybe one or two. You don't have to go too deep with them.
But that one, I want to. I'm interested in hearing about that one because I have some questions about that. So maybe you might answer them when I listen to it. So thank you so much. This has been such an enjoyable conversation. Kenji, how can people get hold of you? How can they reach you?
Yeah, fortunately, having a unique name like mine, it's not too hard to find me. I'm fairly active on social, so. Kenji, I always say it's like Benji, but with a K in front of it, Kenji Kuramoto. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Kenji Kuramoto, Twitter. They're fairly active on both those platforms, or certainly you can go directly to our website. It's just Acuity, ACUITY.co. Yeah. So feel free to take a look at any one of those. And if you're feeling really adventuresome or you want to just kind of get a giggle, take a look at our Drink While You Think. You can type it into YouTube or look it up on Spotify and it will probably pop up. So
that sounds perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kenji. Like I say, I have really enjoyed the conversation. I've got to know you better and learn about your story and learn some things from you too, which is really, really helpful. So thank you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Sarah. It was great talking to you as well, too. And I hope that, hope that some other entrepreneurs who listen to this and other guests on this get some good takeaway value, because I think this is a wonderful format. Thanks so much for having me on.
You're very welcome. And thank you to our audience. Thank you for those who are listening, those who are watching. Please tell your friends, tell your entrepreneur friends about this. We really want this podcast to grow. We want it to be a hugely valuable platform for you all. So again, thank you, Kenji. I appreciate it so much. This has been another exciting episode of EO Atlanta's Taking Flight, and I look forward to seeing our viewers next time. Thank you. And so that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at takingflight.live. For more information about EO Atlanta, visit eoatlanta.org. Special thanks to the following sponsors: